Don't you ever want to do anything exciting? Like what? I want a real adventure. We can go anywhere we want in the whole galaxy. That was amazing! Yeah.
You can see grand adventures even in a rotten galaxy like this.
We are not pirates.
Keep your blaster ready. Oh, we're pirates.
Yeah.
This is the Rebel Force Radio Skeleton Crew After Show.
Let's go!
You know, on the weekly Rebel Force Radio podcast, I know, it's only been, what, 10 years? 12
long
years?
time.
Been a long
11
time.
years.
God. Well, we do the weekly show, you know, the weekly podcast. We have a guest. We run them through the Yoda questionnaire, and one of the questions is, who or what is your least favorite Star Wars character? I may have a new answer for that if I were to be asked the questionnaire. Jude Law is really pissing me off. It's to the point, and this I think is a testament to how great Jude Law is doing at playing the role. I just can't even look at the guy. I just can't even look at him. I find him so repugnant and repulsive in the way he's treating these kids. And, you know, as the show keeps, you know, we're all down to one more episode next week. I just can't see how they going to turn him. How are they going to turn him good? I know Vader, he turned good at the very last minute, so it's possible. But anyway, I don't know why this is just sticking in my car. I think it's because I want to like him. I want to like Jude, but I can't bring myself to do it. But I can bring myself to break down this incredible episode of Skeleton Crew, the penultimate episode. Yeah, we love to say that whenever we get a chance. Penultimate episode. That means there's only one more after this. But so glad to be with you. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Rebel Force Radio Skeleton Crew After Show. That also means there's only one more, most likely, one more Rebel Force Radio Skeleton Crew After Show. It's the penultimate After Show. But we're going to be hanging out with you here for the next couple of hours, probably breaking down this episode and also looking back at the previous 6 episodes. When we get this close to the end, it's kind of fun to go back and talk about maybe where we were right, where we were wrong. But there's still a lot left to be said and a lot to be uncovered and discovered in the final episode. So we're not at the finish line yet. So anyway, if introductions are in order, you might have just stumbled on us on YouTube tonight. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Glad to be back. Thank Jude. It's the after show. Hey, Jason, I'm not surprised that you opened the show claiming, you know, talking about your frustrations with Jude and everything, because, ladies and gentlemen, last night, following the episode, myself, Kyle Newman, and FJ DeSanto were texting each other about it, and Jason jumped in with a 4-word review. Jude is a dick. Yeah, that's what he said. That was his 4-word review. On the other side of the coin, I really appreciate the twists and turns this character is taking. They made him very edgy. They didn't dumb it down. They really gave
Definitely
him
not.
an edge.
Yeah.
And I knew the edge existed when he pulled that knife out a couple episodes again and held it up to Fern's neck. But shooting Brutus in cold blood and then threatening the children and their families, well, it appeared that he was threatening their families at the end of the episode, is a step above anything I thought they were going to do with the character. I thought it was all getting kind of predictable, actually, and then it became very unpredictable. And that's the sign of a good show, in my opinion. I love television episodes that have things happen in them. How many times have we sat through 24 to 26 episode long seasons of a show like ER, where in like 75% of the episodes, nothing happens? In this show, things happen. And how did they pack so much into what turned out to be less than even a half hour worth of story? There was a lot packed into this episode. I'm really excited about it, if you couldn't tell. And I'm really looking forward to talking tonight, Jason, and hearing what our listeners have to think about it.
Yeah, me as well. So let's get right into it. Let's do the tale of the tape. This week we are talking about episode 7. We're going to be in so much trouble. Oh, you know how many times Mac and I have said that to each other after we signed off on a podcast after a podcast? We're going to be in so much trouble. This week's episode was directed by Lee Isaac Chung, and if that name sounds familiar to you, he directed season 3 Mandalorian episode, The Convert, and that's one with Dr. Pershing and all the things going on there on Coruscant. This episode written by Christopher Ford and John Watts clocks in at 29 minutes, almost exactly, minus those ending credits. And the original streaming date for this, January 7th, 2025. That's right, we are in 2025, and the new year begins, Jim, and another Disney Plus series starts to wrap up. But no, I want to make make sure there's no mistake. When I talk about my frustrations with Jod, it's not coming from a place of my frustrations with the show or Jude Law. It's I'm invested. I really am invested, and I care about the kids. I really, Jude Law is a very likable guy on screen. He's a nice looking guy. He looks like a guy that you'd want to hang out with and have a beer. And so the more I want to like him and the more he disappoints me, the more I it's passion, it's excitement. Like you said, it's a mark of a good show because I care enough to hate a character.
Yeah, right. Jod is, the things he did are very hateable, yeah. But they didn't hold back. I really thought it was getting so predictable when Jod stowed away, and then the droid turned around, SM-33 turned around and said, "Oh, you again? Well, I'm going to take care of this," and then boom, beheaded. It was all the stuff, because I thought it was over. I mean, I thought it was over when SM-33 punched Jod out after Fern called unclaimsies and then claimed the ship for kids only. Yeah. And I'm not really sure how that all works out with the mechanics of pirate code, but SM-33 determined that was good enough.
Good enough.
I wonder if SM-33 has sort of developed a little bit of a droid attachment to the kids in a way where they, any sort of protest they put up in that moment was good enough for SM-33. I think he was more on the kids' side ultimately.
Yeah.
But poor SM-33, will we ever see him again? Will he be repaired? But my big question is going into the final episode, because of the things that he's done in this episode, is the character of Jod redeemable? Like you were questioning, right, Jason, is he redeemable? I don't know. I don't think he is, and I don't think he's going to live to see the credits roll at the end of the season finale.
Whoa, really? Yeah. You think that if you think that it's possible that the Skeleton Crew is it's a one and done for Jod Nawood, even if this show would go on for maybe it gets another season or something, or these kids go on, they're not going to be hanging with Jod.
Right. And it's unfortunate because here's a guy, Jude Law, who really has moved the bar up as far as actors acting in Star Wars. It really seems like he took full ownership of this character throughout, made it his performance was so convincing.
Yeah.
And I really felt like he knew exactly who this character was and exactly what he wanted to do with that character. And it almost seems like he molded the character in a way to fit him, as opposed to taking his skills as an actor and trying to fit into Star Wars, which I think a lot of actors do. They try to approach Star Wars in a Star Wars way, whereas Jude Law is inserting himself into Star Wars and really creating a character that he can call his own 100% and do so in such a convincing way that it's elevated the standard for future Star Wars acting. And I maybe it's elevated it too high, because he's turned in one of the best Star Wars performances from an actor I think we've seen throughout the entire history of Star Wars, quite honestly. Yeah. So it's of that level. And it just seems to come so naturally to him as well, which is great, because we've seen a lot of actors appear to be uncomfortable in their own skin when appearing as a Star Wars character. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it. I could give examples, you know. I don't think you have to look much further than Hayden Christensen. But again, Hayden has kind of grown into that role of Anakin Skywalker. But at first, it seemed like a very rocky road for a guy like him. And many others throughout the history. I mean, a better example might even be Natalie Portman, who often seemed
I think that's
uncomfortable
the
in her own
perfect
skin.
example right there, because and there's also been, I mean, Hayden Christensen has turned in some great performances. You know, we've dissected on the show over the years, you know, where things might have kind of gone sideways for Hayden in episodes 2 and 3, has a lot to do with George. But you look at somebody like Natalie Portman. You know, she was coming off a couple of big movies. She really made her claim to fame in that the movie, what was it, the Assassin?
Black Swan?
No. I'm going back. The Professional. That's it. Yeah, the Professional. And you know, critically acclaimed, and she was no noob. So for her, because you can't say that it's a lack of confidence. You know, with Hayden, you could say, "Hey, first time on a big film like this." So but with Natalie, you can't chalk it up to lack of confidence. I think that it has a lot to do with, honestly, with George's style as a director. I think it takes a certain type of actor to put in a good performance in spite of or despite what they might be looking for from George. But a guy like Jude Law, with his experience and having worked with so many different types of people, he doesn't seem intimidated by the material. And I know some people are out there saying, wait a minute, this isn't the 10 Commandments. This isn't, you know, but no, I think that some actors are intimidated by Star Wars because their head immediately goes to the fandom, the online, and all of that. And they think they get in their own way. Or they could go another route and they ham it up to the point where it's like, come on, you know. And we saw a lot of that with some of the relative unknowns that came in for the Mandalorian. You know, some of the comedians that were put in those kind of, you know, some of the more background roles, but they really hammed it up. And so that's the other direction they can go. I think Jude Law is really just playing it perfectly and making both sides of the character believable. When he's being somewhat sympathetic to the kids in the earlier episodes, you buy it. When he's being, you know what, when I called him on the text thread, you buy that as well. So we'll definitely be talking more and more about Jod and what makes him tick. Before I forget though, you brought up something that I had in my notes about SM-33 and the attachment to the kids. So you're absolutely right. So they're at first they try, and because they're trying to get control of the ship, because Wim seems to be the first one to kind of get the idea that the ship is, quote unquote, the key to getting back to Aton, cutting through the toxic maelstrom, as Brutus calls it. And so, you know, he does his attack and he goes after, and it seems very fruitless. But in all the commotion, they realize that Jod, he's the captain of the frigate. He's no longer the captain of the Onyx Cinder. So they go to call it. He puts his hand over their mouths so they can't speak it. He calls it, and then out of nowhere comes this very kid-like, I call unclaimsies, like I double dog dare you, triple dog dare you. And I'm telling you, I don't think that's pirate code. There's no way that claimsies and unclaimsies is pirate code. So I think you're absolutely right. I think SM-33 was waiting for a moment. You know, maybe with droids, they can't totally go back on their programming, but maybe there's like a little bit of gray area where as long as it's within a margin, they can go back on their programming. And, you know, he says, you know, it'd be close enough. And then, so they take over. So I do think that there's an attachment with this droid and the kids. And I think that he was displaying a degree of I don't know what word, going against protocol, going against his programming and all of that. And that's something that makes a droid special. We don't see that in every droid. It separates the, as George would call them, the toasters and the appliances from something a little bit deeper.
So what makes SM-33 different? Well, I think it's the little rat that lives in his head. That little rat is in there flipping knobs and crossing wires and everything else. The little rat likes the kids because if you remember, I think it was episode 3, Neil feeds the rat. They have that blue stew that Jude had made. And he goes, there's more in the pot. And then the next shot, you see Neil with a bowl feeding that little rat. Boom.
Yeah.
Instant loyalty. Instant loyalty. The quickest way to a rat's heart is through his stomach. So,
and haven't
Neil,
we said or observed, Jim, that when SM-33 would do something kind of against the kids, that the little rat would make itself appear and sometimes leave? So
every time he was covering up the location of Aton, it seemed like the rat.
it was the that's right. It was the Aton thing. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think you might be onto something because they certainly give plenty of screen time to this little rat, to where I think that I think whether or not they definitively answer it in the course of the show, but that's going to work for my headcanon. I think that's what makes SM-33 definitely special and different. I'm not going to compare him to R2-D2, but you can't. But I will say that that was, Anakin recognized something very special about R2-D2 that even some of his fellow Jedi didn't quite understand, didn't see. Yeah. So the episode opens with the parents. We got to talk about the parents and their risky gambit here. Here's a question that I have been wrestling with a bit, and I don't want to downplay the potential risks that the parents face. But in the case of, when we saw the droid interrogating Wendell, because Wendell had hooked something up to the computer terminal at the office, and then when they get stunned, they kind of do this kind of fun relay race where they grab the transmitter. They know they're all in for it, but they have to do a relay till somebody gets far enough out that they can release this thing. But how high are the stakes? We don't really know what the parents are risking because we don't know what punishment on Aton is. We haven't seen it. People act plenty afraid of the droids, or do they? Have you gotten a sense, or what is your sense for just how much is at stake, or how much the parents are really risking every time they do something behind these droids' backs? They don't seem menacing. They seem creepy, but for me, not menacing or harmful.
Well, being stunned doesn't appear to cause any permanent damage. So if you're trying to get something done, it's you'd be more than willing to take a stun blast if it doesn't really mess you up that much. And also remember when the droids took them into custody after they released this communications buoy.
Yeah.
They were in an office being told that they violated protocols and everything. But then when the Onyx Cinder arrives, they're free to walk right out of there and go out to the park. And I mean, they're not being held against their will or anything. So I don't really understand how justice gets delivered on Aton. Maybe they don't even really have a legitimate justice system because nobody ever tries to break these rules. And just over time, it's sort of they become passive about that kind of thing.
Adam is prime here on the chat. He says they have said that they send people to the mines. That is a phrase that we've heard. So of course, if they're mining, if they're refining and minting this currency, that would make sense. They would have mines. So
classic Star Wars punishment: send them to the mines. Ooh, they're going to send us to the spice mines of Kessel. I mean, that's a classic Star Wars punishment. So yeah, there are penalties.
Yeah, and maybe the reason that they appear to be sort of free to walk around is because they're not going anywhere. Where are they going to run to? They can't get off world, and the droids, they never forget. So, oh yeah, you can walk out in here, you can hug your kids, but don't worry. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be picking you up and sending you to the mine. So it could be something like that, where they really are, to some degree, prisoners there. But that was just the one thing where, we're picking nits here. But a nit that I would pick is that I haven't felt the real danger for the parents. I've felt it for the kids, to the degree that they can do that with kids in a show. But the parents represented an opportunity to show some higher stakes, and I just don't feel that for me, that hasn't paid off yet.
Well, as characters, though, the parents are going through the ultimate anxiety, the ultimate with their kids being lost in space somewhere. That, it's hard to pile on them as characters. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Maybe they should have tied up the elephant lady and started like whipping her or something.
I know.
Really
it does sound like I'm
stakes.
looking for violence or something. And I guess I'm not. But, maybe they could have shown us one of those mines. So that you would go, oh, wow, you wouldn't want to go there. Because when they showed Bill Burr working on that prison planet in Mandalorian, it's like, okay, yeah, this looks really, really unpleasant. I don't want to be doing that. But,
yeah, that's a good example to use. I mean, that's one of the rare times we actually have seen someone in Star Wars paying for their sins. It was Bill Burr. Yeah. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It seems like it's all pretty lax there on that planet. So
yeah, it does. It does, and it
which just reinforces what Jude was saying when he was chastising the kids and he called them sheltered and spoiled and everything else. I mean,
so hateful that
there
guy.
might be something to that.
Yeah,
well,
he's kind of holding
dealing
up a
with
mirror
weak,
to some
sheltered,
degree.
spoiled children. Yeah, he had a headache. He said he had a headache. He had a terrible headache. He was hungry. He had reached his boiling point.
How many times have you said that as a parent? I've got a headache. I'm tired. I worked all day. Just clam up.
Just be quiet, you weak, sheltered, spoiled children. Damn it.
Oh, it seems like just
and
yesterday.
instead of, I mean, like, some kids who grew up in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, we weren't any strangers to our parents giving us a little thrashing from time to time. And to me, seeing Jude pull out that lightsaber and ignite it was like watching my dad take his belt off, It was like, because very rarely would my dad ever use the belt. Yeah. But he sure took it off an awful lot, The other move my dad had, oh God, he'd probably be upset I don't care. He would always threaten me and Billy Mack when we were acting up. And act like he was going to give us a smack. But he wouldn't. But what he would do, his big move was he would take his watch off and put it on the table because he didn't want to damage his watch, giving us a beatdown.
Wow.
But he'd take that watch off the table, and then me and Billy would just sit there like still, yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I don't ever recall getting, I have to say this. I don't ever recall getting a smack once that watch came off. The watch coming off was all we needed to see.
Dang.
That was enough.
And you probably can still remember the sound of it clanking onto the the countertop. Wherever you were in the house, you probably could hear that. Yeah. Wow.
God forbid he damaged the watch, damaging us.
I would say in general, this episode, there are some character moments. We're going to get into sort of Wim's guilt trip here in a second, but you were talking about earlier about how the show is sort of big on showing you things instead of just talking about things, and that's what I really thought this episode did. On my first viewing, I thought, I don't know if there's really a whole lot to talk about because we kind of had these two fairly rich episodes with some good character stuff, and this is where things are starting to pay off. And we're on the wind down, but we got shown a lot of things. We saw the mint, we saw the reunion with the kids and the parents. we saw the parents' last-ditch effort to try and help the kids. We kind of unlocked the mystery of how ships get on and off at Aton. So a lot of that stuff was either answered or shown to us. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that they did give us this moment with Wim and his guilt trip. I don't know that I quite understand Wim. Just when I think that I do, I'll hear a caller or you or somebody will say something. I'll be like, yeah, I hadn't really thought of that, because Wim his motivation is that he wants to help people. He wants to save people. In his mind, the ultimate personification of that is a Jedi. He has no idea how he would ever become a Jedi. We're not even quite sure to what degree Jedi are real in Wim's universe. We just don't know. All we see is him reading about them in either a comic book or a history book of some sort. So his kind of lamenting the fact that he is the one that was inevitably responsible for sending them out into space. I mean, is that it? Is that what he's sort of down in the dumps about it? Because I keep wanting to say that Wim's the type of kid that wants the adventure to keep going, and that the closer they get to resolving their problem and getting back onto the planet, the more sad he seems to get. Very different than, say, like Neil, who's like gets more excited the closer they get to going home. So I don't know that I figured Wim out.
I think I did. I think I did. Because when Fern announced, hey, we're back home, we finally made it, you could easily tell that Wim was bummed that the adventure appeared to be over.
Mm-hmm.
The kid actor was conveying some really good emotion. And I thought that the whole episode was so well directed by Lee Isaac Chung. I mean, just unbelievably great.
Yeah.
And what happens in the exchange he has with Fern, he says, it's clear to everyone he's bummed the adventure's over. He says, everything's going to go back to the way it was. And then he goes, I still have to take the assessment.
Yeah.
This whole show is about a kid who's trying to duck out of taking a test, an exam in school. That's all this show really is. I've figured Wim out. He's a slacker.
You've boiled it down. And his father was a slacker too, I bet. Yeah.
That's right, McFly. That's right. So, yeah, absolutely. Wim is bummed because he's going to have to go take that damn test that he still has yet to study for. They've been lost in space. He could have been studying, but no. He only wants to find the easy way out.
And it seems to me that it's a pretty small range of career opportunities, possibilities there on Aton. Everybody seems to have kind of a similar gig. Or all towards the great, what is it? The great cause, the great
work,
the great work, right?
You could be a supervisor, you could be an analyst, you could be a coordinator, or you could be an undersecretary,
or a senior manager.
And there must be a secretary you can be as well. But yeah, they're all very much like I said. I've drawn the parallels between what goes on at Aton and what happens in George Orwell's novel 1984. It's a very similar, or to keep it more in Lucasfilm sort of territory, we could talk about THX 1138, a society that is heavily under control. And in THX 1138, they control people by injecting drugs into them. But they're constantly being monitored too, even when they open their medicine cabinet. What's wrong? There's no freedom, and the people of Aton, I don't think, have any freedom. The only ones who really do are the kids, and the kids are blissfully unaware of the mechanics that go behind the Aton society and make it all work.
They don't find out anything until they graduate. Excuse me, according to Wim's father, Wendell.
So they're kept in the dark at all times, and I don't know what kind of education ignorance provides, It just seems like the society's built around keeping children down at the end of the day, because what's the point? Their futures are all predetermined for them, so it seems. It's all based on these assessment tests. I'm with Wim. I'd do anything in my power to avoid taking that test and have my future laid out for me by someone else. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I never had to take one of those in our own real world, one of those assessment tests. I was always afraid that I would take it and it would, say I was going to have to do something with my hands, manual labor. So I was glad that I didn't
like the ditch digger.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming.
So yeah, I was definitely happy that I could sort of, make my own destiny. Which is what I think, at the end of the day, what Wim really wants. He wants choices, and he certainly wants to be able to live a life beyond just at Aton. And the test, I think, is likely a kind of a symbol. It symbolizes his lack of choice, in a way, his lack of, his destiny. Something else I wanted to talk about as we're, again, picking nits. The hologram transmission with the parents and the message that they worked so hard to get to the kids. When they said to find a Republic, what was the...
Like an envoy, ambassador? What did they say?
A Republic something. The parents' message didn't really help them.
Right.
At the end of the day, because I thought, here comes old Trapper Wolf or, one of those guys that was going to come in. Or I thought maybe the ship might get met, with a Republic emissary. I think, no, Maddie, emissary. No, it's not Republic Emissary. I don't think. That's what they called Jude when he showed up. They said that he was a Republic emissary because that's obviously what his ship was. The Onyx.
I'm pretty sure that was the same. I think that's kind of the thing that really told Jude to fall into that role upon arrival was to impersonate a Republic emissary. I'm almost positive that Maddie and everyone else who's blowing up the chat right now saying emissary. I think they're absolutely correct. Yeah. I think that's what they said in the...
That's what the parents instructed them to do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically the parents are telling them to pull over and ask for directions.
Really, so it is emissary. So it is emissary. So find a Republic emissary. They don't tell them where to find one. Where are the kids supposed to find a Republic emissary? These kids have never been off world. I just found the parents, their help was not very helpful. So at the end of the day, Wim was starting to guess that the ship had the ability to get to Aton and get through the barrier. But at the end of the day, they really only have Jude to thank for, I think, actually ending back up on Aton. He certainly was more helpful than the parents.
Well, yeah, but don't you think that the 2 times the pirates came under attack by those Republic X-Wings, that if they were, their ships were disabled and the X-Wing pilots were able to board the ships and find the kids, they probably could have got them home,
Well,
when you think about it.
Could they, though? Because here's the big question. Who knows about Aton?
No, that's a great question.
They say Republic. They don't say, and again, this might be picking nits, but they don't say New Republic.
No,
they just say
the kids
the
have no
Republic.
knowledge of the kids had no knowledge of the Civil War. So
but
they
neither
don't
do the parents seem to. The parents don't specify New Republic versus. They just call it Republic Emissary.
Right.
So,
and they were probably still speaking in those terms during the Imperial era because they didn't know what was going on out there. And Palpatine himself and the Imperials probably had no idea of the location of Aton or even that there was a Republic mint there in the first place. That must have been lost to time. Or when Palpatine overthrew the Old Republic, then those secrets died with the Old Republic. And
Yeah.
the people of Aton have been sitting there for like 30, 40 years wondering where the emissaries are. The emissary finally appears, and they greet the emissary with open arms. It appears that there's a whole system set in place for when the emissary shows up. And it's something that probably happens so often that all the protocols and all of the systems in place, it just worked automatically by that point. I think a key thing to pay attention to is when they approach Aton and Brutus starts to dispute the viability of actually landing on the planet because of all the storms that surrounded it.
Yeah.
John says, Aton has been hidden for hundreds of years. Yeah. Do you think they could have done it by just leaving it out in the open? No, it has been lost. So Aton has been cut off from the rest of the galaxy for hundreds of years at this point.
Yep.
And they probably missed the Clone Wars. They probably missed the Rise of the Empire. They missed the Galactic Civil War. And now the New Republic is in charge. So would the New Republic have any knowledge of Aton? I think they would have already stopped by if that were the case. That would have been the first place I would have gone after blowing up the Death Star 2, is go right to Aton and fund the new government. The new society?
What if Skeleton Crew is just a sequel to the Acolyte? They saw the shenanigans that went on with the Jedi and the events of the Acolyte, and they're like, that's it. We're shutting ourselves off from the rest of the galaxy, because this looks to be, and people have pointed out, and I agree, based on some of the color choices and just the overall look of Aton, it looks to be High Republic or end of High Republic era. So hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years, yeah. I think Acolyte was at 150 years before the original trilogy, or before the prequels. I can't remember, but
well,
I think probably even during the era even of the Acolyte, though, that Aton and these jewels of the Republic were hidden from
even further
from everyone. Pretty much.
Wow. So this could be proper High Republic era that they are still accustomed to. But so these emissaries are coming in and out, and I agree with you, Jim. I think that is just standard operating procedure. They all fall in. They know exactly what to do. So someone is regularly coming in and taking money out of that mint and going off world with it, and it's an unlimited source of money. So who the hell are they that's doing it? Where's that money going to that's being picked up all the time from these emissaries?
Well, that's part of the big mystery of Aton. It still has yet to be resolved. I mean, what's up with the Jewels of the Republic? What is the great work? What happened to the other 8 planets, like Ad Akron? Why were they destroyed? What's up with that? So these are some mysteries that we have to contend with as we head to the season finale, possibly the series finale.
For sure. But I don't, I certainly don't want to imply that this is all just big mystery box stuff, because I think there's been enough that's paid off with this series. And so these questions, it's not like, a lot of times it depends on how the creators are handling the unanswered questions. I don't feel like it's being dangled in front of us and that there's a bunch of characters on screen that know all this stuff, and we as the audience are in the dark. Our primary characters are the kids, and Jod are in the dark. They don't know anything, and we don't know how much the parents actually know. I don't think the parents don't know everything. They know more than the kids, and they know more than Jod, but I don't know if that knowledge that they get upon graduation is going to be as extensive as some of the questions that we're asking. How long? Why? Who are these people that are coming taking this money? I just can't imagine a society. They'd have to have a pretty good reason why to make all those people comply with this culture where they can't go off world and all that. So I would imagine
Jason, you'll find out upon graduation.
Okay.
Just stop asking so many questions.
All right. By the way, this is a call-in show, and the number to call is 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1737. If you're on delayed podcast, you'd have to just leave a voicemail. We can't really help you out. But if you're listening live, that's the number to call. And as I'm fond of saying, we love to read your chats. We appreciate the super chats and all that, but this is a podcast, and the audio takes precedence, and we want to hear your calls. So 708-866-1737. The Pirates, Jude and Brutus. You mentioned it earlier, a absolutely brutal takedown of Brutus. I wasn't really... I wasn't sad to see Brutus go. I mean, he was a pretty, I think, despicable guy, but there was really no hesitation. That was the other thing with John. John saw an opportunity. He was compromised, walked right up, shot him point blank, I assume, like right in the head, in front of children. So, man's got to do what a man's got to do.
Well, and listen, killing Brutus in cold blood. If you pay attention to the dialogue right before that happens, Brutus says, treasure or not, you're a dead man. Yes. Brutus has already committed himself to executing Jude, regardless of whether or not they found the treasure. And for Jude to hear that, and then all of a sudden, the kids grab Brutus with that cargo claw. I mean, the kids are ultimately doing Jude a big favor in this moment.
Yes.
They're doing a huge favor for him. And I was pretty impressed by little meek KB. Who's using her voice-altering augs. The same way she did in the first episode when the two girls were spying on the boys as they were looking at that at the ship buried. But KB threatens the pirates. She will kill Brutus. Yeah. She says, let us go or this guy's done for. And I was like, you go, KB. I almost wanted to see KB press the button and crush Brutus. And then with that voice augmentation, go, ha, 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 ha. It would have been wonderful. But no, that's maybe a little even too dark for Skeleton Crew. But I thought it was really interesting that Jude took advantage of that moment, and the kids really delivered him a gift by incapacitating Brutus. And Jude says it all. He's a stinking, backstabbing mutineer.
Yep.
And that's obvious. I mean,
they
as
had
soon
beef
as
going back to the beginning of the series. Yeah.
Yes. And Beef is another character in the series too. And I think he's still doing pretty well, Beef. But in this case, I'm surprised that there was no dialogue with Jude at least acknowledging, hey, you guys, by grabbing Brutus, you really did me a solid. But I mean, there was just no time for that.
No.
And also note that Jude did shoot Brutus with his own blaster musket. He picked it up. It was Brutus's. Brutus dropped it when the claw snagged him. Jude picked it up and just without even hesitating for a second. God, I love that scene. I'm like, yes. I mean, because I felt like if they tap danced around Jude's real despicable nature, I mean, he is a pirate. He's doing what pirates do.
He's ruthless.
And I can't really hold that against him. He's doing what pirates do. And but I just didn't expect that moment where he just killed Brutus in cold blood. No. And then just let the headache take him onto the ship and threaten the kids. And it was just great. I mean, we really saw in this episode what I believe to be Jude's true nature. After kind of tap dancing around it for 6 episodes prior, having all these other characters warn the kids, this guy's not to be trusted. How many times have we heard that throughout this series? And it pays off. It paid off. I'm so
sure
happy.
It sure did. He turns out to be just as much of a scumbag as Kim said, as Pocket said. Who else is in the list of characters, but there have been others that have, warned the kids and warned us as the audience, because the kids are a proxy for us to some degree. And so we're watching this. And again, Jude Law is such a likable guy. You want to believe the best, and it's, looks can be deceiving, all that stuff. So
all Catholics had to do was sniff him, and he knew right away that this is not a guy to be trusted.
Yeah, Catholics. How'd we forget about Catholics?
Catholics just sniffed him and knew.
He knew. Wow. So Brutus is done. And also there was a little bit of ball busting going on as Brutus and Jude were talking. And Jude was pretty secure in the fact that the crew preferred him to Brutus. So I think that was also extra motivation. He knew that by wiping out Brutus, he was still he wasn't going to jeopardize losing the support of the crew. He was going to have his crew.
Of the crew. Yeah. Mine is Glurb, of course. Moment of silence for Glurb. Quarren Squidhead, who flew the pirate snub fighter right into the barrier and died. That was confirmed. He did die because on board the pirate frigate, there were like several hologram monitors visible, and they all flatlined.
Right. Yeah.
And then it said something in Airbush, and I wish I had translated that. Maybe somebody in the chat knows what it was. It was just like one word. It might have just said, gone. I don't know what it said, but I was just sad for him because he's, Glurb. He's never going to settle down and get his own glowweed plantation.
Really, there is something to be said. If you ever find yourself a character in some sort of action adventure or war movie, don't ever be the one that reveals what you want to do once all the smoke is clear. Don't be the guy that says, I can't wait till the war is over. I'm going to find myself a nice girl and settle down. You're not going to live to see. You're not getting your girl in the white picket fence. And we should have known that Glurb was his time was limited. Something else too that we talked about in previous shows was how easy it seemed to dispatch of SM-33. You just had to pull those wires out. And so we'd seen Jude do that, and we've seen SM-33 out of commission. But there was something just exceptionally brutal about his decapitation. So having seen Jude handle SM-33 in less threatening, or not threatening, but less brutal ways, made, when he finally did chop his head off, it felt extra ruthless or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, he knows how to turn him off. Why didn't he just press the off button? And I noticed something interesting with SM-33. They turned him on a couple of episodes ago when the episode started. They had him tied down and they turned him on. They flicked the switch on the back of his neck. But when Jude turned him off, he hit him in the back. At least it appeared he hit him in the back. So I was just thinking, well, he has got an on switch and an off switch, apparently. But if I was a droid, I would do everything I could. Yeah, I would do everything I could to cover those switches up. You said he pulled wires. Did that happen in a previous episode, or is that Jason Swank canon?
No, no. I remember him doing that flip when he was getting ready to attack Neil the first time. And he did that flip, and I thought he pulled wires out of the back. I know he's done the button.
No, it was a button. He hit a button.
He didn't pull wires.
Moment. I could see why it looked like he pulled wires. But he hit the button. But I mean, I always watch with that descriptive audio track, and they spell it out for you in very black and white terms. Oh, Soka Style 4899 says the Arabash on the monitor when Glurb died. It just said single lost. So,
okay.
Further confirmation that Glurb or whatever the hell his name is, he's not going to be on the glowweed plantation. A lot of lost potential there. I think there could have been a
he
whole series, a whole other Disney Plus series, Glurb on the Plantation.
He was a big investor in the burgeoning glowweed market. But here's an image of the decapitation of SM-33, and it was presented in a way. I don't want to say finality because, as Luke Skywalker told us, no one's ever really gone, and especially when it comes to droids, they can be repaired. But boy, this felt kind of like an end to SM-33.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It does. In my heart of hearts, I believe that he will be repaired and he will return just because of the fact that he was destroyed trying to save the kids.
Yeah.
So I don't think that sort of sentimentality, even in fiction, deserves a death sentence. You want to bring him back at the end.
Sure.
33. I could just see Neil, react. 33. Yeah, that's going to be like one of the final scenes of next week's season finale.
It might be like the old Incredible Journey where the little boy is waiting for the golden retriever to come up over the through the woods. Could be Neil. He could be looking out backyard there at Aton, sad, missing SM-33, and there he comes. I guess SM-33 is sort of like, if we're going to draw these Goonies equivalents, he might be the sloth of Skeleton Crew. Neil's the chunk.
Okay.
Somebody was saying that they wanted to see. I saw on our Facebook group. Somebody was like, "Well, who's going to do the truffle shuffle?" And it's like, "Well, it's got to be Neil." I mean, Neil's got the jiggles. He's got the belly. He can do that.
Which one is the Corey Feldman? That's all I'm really concerned.
The mouth character, the Corey Feldman character, I think is Fern.
Fern. Okay.
I think it's Fern. Right. I think Wim is the Mikey. That's
I
how
like
I
Fern
would,
a lot.
That's how I would do it. I like.
I gotta
Fern
say, I like
awful lot
Fern
too.
a lot.
Yes.
She's got a real interesting attitude. It's really tough to BS her, and that's a great quality, especially for a kid character to have. She seems to be, and they've already established that she's a very smart kid, but she definitely seems to be smarter beyond her age. She seems to be more well-schooled. She has, she's not so naive. She really takes orders from one person, me. And I mean, there are elements of Han Solo to her character.
Absolutely, there's Han Solo to her. Yes, 100% agree. And I think that it's a great example of how to write some of these characters because I watch Fern and I'm rooting for her, and she just seems like a capable future hero in the Star Wars universe. I say future because she's still just a kid. But in the actress that plays her, like you said earlier, the performances that Lee Isaac Chung got out of the kids, everyone was raving about Bryce Dallas Howard in the last episode. I thought the performances here maybe better even than in the last episode. I think they just were fantastic. They were so believable. Their rage that they had at Jod in the end. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I was so worked up watching it, is because I was really feeling the performances of the kids and the expressions on their faces, the disappointment, the sadness, the anger, all of those dark side emotions. I think the kids were exhibiting for sure.
Well, I think each one of the directors has done exceptional work with the children. Each one of them. And I think that is more an indication to me is to like how good the children actually are as actors.
Right.
To find that consistency throughout the whole season. But only Bryce Dallas Howard can direct it and have everyone in fandom hit social media demanding that she gets the next Star Wars film. Hey, where's all the demands for Lee Isaac Chung? Lee Isaac Chung is actually a guy who has directed feature films, unlike Bryce Howard. And I really don't, I like Bryce and everything, but I was really amused by the avalanche of support for her to direct Star Wars films. People are saying, give her a trilogy and everything. I'm thinking, slow down. No rookie director should cut her teeth on a Star Wars film. I think you need to build up your resume a little bit more. And Lee Isaac Chung, he just did a big blockbuster over the summer, Twisters, and he has a lot on his resume. And I think if anybody's going to be looking at Skeleton Crew directors to lead a Star Wars film, you should be looking at names like John Watts, Lee Isaac Chung, even Jake Schreier, who also has directed feature films, and he was the director of the show Beef, not the character Beef, the show Beef. These guys, I think, are all much better candidates to helm a Star Wars film. But I do like Bryce. And FJ DeSanto gave me kind of a beatdown over the text because I was being a little verbal about my poo-pooing the idea of Bryce Dallas Howard directing a Star Wars film on social media. FJ saw that, and he's been letting me have it, really.
He's been letting you have it. Here's how I would characterize it. I would say, because I don't disagree with you at all, I found the near universal outcry for Bryce Dallas Howard to, have a film, have a trilogy. I thought it was disproportionate to what we've actually seen. It's not that I don't think she's done a good job or don't think that she could eventually do this, but I thought it was just so over the top because there are others that have contributed as significantly, I think. And there's the Jack Black and the Lizzo. I'm sorry, I know that wasn't Bryce. I know we can't
hold that against Bryce.
I know
you can't hold that against Bryce.
I can try,
but I can
try.
But I mean, just watching that episode alone, I wouldn't say, "Oh, give the director of this a Star Wars film." I like Bryce a lot. I think she does a lot with those like more tender moments that you might see. Like with Women KB in the last episode. I mean, I think she did a wonderful job, but directing a couple of good episodes of a Star Wars streaming series and directing a Star Wars film are two vastly different beasts. And I think Bryce needs to direct scripted feature films. She's only done shorts and television episodes. She needs to direct a full-length feature film. I think she did one with her dad, Ron Howard. It was a documentary called Dads. But again, a $500 million special effects laden Star Wars epic needs somebody who's done more than co-direct a documentary about fatherhood with their own father. That's all I'm saying. Give her some feature films, then we should really start considering her to sit in the director's chair for a feature film. But I was just amazed at the avalanche of articles and social media posts and all of these demands, like it's a sure thing. And I don't know. I mean, that's the hang up I have with Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. She might have won Academy Awards for directing documentaries in Pakistan, but that's vastly different than an American tentpole franchise film that's funded at the tune of $400 to $600 million, whatever the case may be with Star Wars films these days.
Yeah. There's really, it's difficult to compare directing a 28-minute episode of a television streaming series and a 2-hour plus blockbuster film. Not saying that Disney Plus Star Wars cannot be a training ground to a degree to graduate into features or something like that, but agreed. I just would say it was disproportionate. Let's get on to let's take some calls. I think that we should probably hear from some of our listeners here. Let's start with, how about, we got Liam from, Liam from Canada. Liam, welcome to America. You might be
shot in AA.
You might be a fellow citizen here before too long here in Canada.
I certainly hope not, but if it brings me closer to you guys, hey, that's
all right. Well,
so
we love our Canadian friends very much. So
Yeah, I just wanted to call in because I have a theory about how that lightsaber might have come into Tak Rennett's possession.
Oh, yeah, right. It's part of his booty.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're going to see, I don't know if we're going to find out in the last episode about this, but so we have these 9 planets, and we know that they're Old Republic mints, and we know that this is some of those important treasure that the Republic has to protect. So they've gone through all these lengths to try to hide these planets. They've enshrouded them in this kind of gaseous storm kind of thing. But who would the Republic send to guard their most important treasure? I think they would send Jedi, right? I think they would send Jedi to each of these planets to guard the treasure. And so I think the supervisor of each of these planets is a Jedi. And I think how Tak Rennet came into possession of that lightsaber is when he went to Aton, he took out the supervisor and was left with the lightsaber from the supervisor. And that's how we find it in the treasure room. I'm not saying we're going to find out in the final episode. I don't think there's probably enough time for that. But I think that might be how that came to be in his sort of treasure room.
I like the theory because I'm still holding firm that the supervisor is going to be Rennet, or at the very least a descendant of Rennet. Like that, there's a line. I think that Rennet is connected to the supervisor. Yeah, for sure. I like the theory about, who would the Republic send at that time to protect these jewels of the Republic? And a Jedi makes all the sense in the world.
Sure it does, but something you have to keep in mind are the kids are very familiar with reacting to something favorably by saying, "So wizard." So clearly the supervisor is Kidster.
There you go.
Discuss amongst yourselves.
Sorry, Liam. We're not going to entertain any other theories about the identity of the supervisor. Mac has spoken. It's Kidster. It's Kidster.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be.
I can't deny that's pretty solid.
Thank you.
But you know what? I'm glad that you because I don't remember me speculating too much about how the lightsaber came to Rennet. I didn't give a whole lot of thought to it. I just thought, well, he's a pirate, and they, obviously these were special things to him because they were in sort of they were prized possessions. They were like on display. He's a collector, like Mac, like me. I have action figures. He had souvenirs from his conquests. One of them being look, Mac has a lightsaber. He's no pirate.
Always
he's got a lightsaber held right here.
In all seriousness, though, I thought if Tak Rennet had access to a ship that would take him in and out of the Aton atmosphere and beyond the barrier, and he also had access to the mint, that I thought, well, maybe the stuff that we see in his lair in episode 5 are things he purchased with his fortunes throughout the galaxy, because we've heard stories. I don't think we've ever actually seen it in live action or even in animation, but there are stories about Jedi artifacts being sold on the black market. I mean, for crying out loud, Luthen in Andor had, I'm pretty sure he had lightsabers for sale, lightsaber hilts for sale in his shop. He definitely had Jedi holocrons. So there's a market for that kind of thing. So maybe Tak Rennet was just simply a collector, and he was using the fortune from the vaults on Aton to afford his collectibles.
Yeah, I think that definitely sounds possible as well. And one of the things I was wondering about was there's a moment when you hear the supervisor's voice come over the intercom when they're holding the parents in that kind of meeting room. And it almost looks as though what's her name? The Undersecretary Farah, I think. It looks as though she maybe was surprised to hear his voice and maybe even hadn't heard the supervisor's voice before. And I was wondering what you guys think about that. Is that the first time that they were actually hearing the supervisor's voice.
Are you
at that
saying,
point.
Liam, that there was like a reaction shot of Farah upon hearing the voice? It didn't jump out to me. That doesn't mean anything.
She clutches her chest, I think.
Huh.
Yeah,
I think
she
she
holds
was
her
just-
chest, but I'm not sure if that's when
You
the
know,
ship is coming.
do you remember in The Wizard of Oz, every time they mentioned the wizard, the Munchkins would go, oh. So I wonder if there's a little bit of that with the supervisor, that it's almost like a Wizard of Oz type character where they've, he's almost mythical. No one ever sees him. Do I have to bring up the Commodore in the Popeye movie again? I know you're tired of me saying it, but I there's just so many parallels to the Commodore in Popeye.
Pappy. Well, I'll tell you this: the characters they have mentioned the supervisor several times in previous episodes. It appears there's some familiarity with this supervisor. Supervisor lives up in a big tower, so that indicates that this character is largely inaccessible to the normal people, and that very few actually are able to discuss anything with the supervisor. Like maybe even only droids are communicating with the supervisor. So again, maybe the supervisor himself is a droid. It sounded kind of like a droid voice. The credit goes to British comedian actor Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
As far as who provides the voice for the supervisor. And I think Stephen Fry there was a narrator in the Harry Potter films, and he was that narrator.
It was the books. It was the UK versions of the audiobooks were narrated by Stephen Fry, and
Yeah, I
so
couldn't
for a
remember
whole
a
generation
narrator.
of kids like that. Yeah, he was
I
also
see.
part of a comedy duo with Hugh Laurie back in I think the late 70s, early 80s. Fry and Laurie, they had a thing together. But yeah, he's one of those. Yeah, he's just one of those kind of iconic people. He's got a lot of fans. He's an author. He's a lecturer. He's an intellectual and a comedian. So he's kind of done a lot.
He was
of
in
everything.
A Fish Called Wanda. He was in A Fish Called Wanda.
Yes, he was.
That was just one of his credits that really jumped out to me. But here in the States, maybe we just aren't as familiar with Stephen Fry as folks in the UK are.
Right. But he's definitely a big fixture. Hey, Liam, thanks so much for the call. Thank you for being a Patreon. Love it. Thank you. We do have some super chats. We'll get back to the switchboard in just a moment, but I want to make sure that we get through our super chats. Scott St. Louis says, another good Star Wars show and another fabulous after show from Boston with love. Thanks, Jason and Jimmy Mac. Thank you, Scott.
I have my barf bag right here.
Max got
just
the
in
barf
case I
bag.
might need it at some point during this show. Boston area Rebel Force fans, barf.
Sokka Style says, was John going to step on the rat or what? It looked like I was sitting there because at this point I believe anything coming from Jod. And so I thought, oh my God, if he steps on that rat, but he just kind of gave him a little kick. So I think the rat is okay. I think the rat is, really maybe a little embarrassed, but otherwise fine.
A little embarrassed.
RFR number 1, also Acolyte was 100 years before Revenge. Yeah,
Right.
they never got totally specific, but yeah, about that. Opening Crawl said 100 years before the rise of the Empire. So, sure.
Yeah, that works. I said 150 years. I mean, who cares really? It's, but it is like a century. That's one thing we really need to take out of it is it's been a long time,
right?
And John says hundreds of years when he talks about how long Manhattan's been hidden.
Right.
So.
N64 Rescue says episodes 3 and 7 have been my favorites so far. Long live RFR. This episode improved for me on the second viewing. I thought I was coming off of the last two where there was a lot more character moments, a lot more dialogue, and this was again showing us a lot more action, less dialogue, and so I wasn't sure how to take it. Again, I will say that I think this show is hampered for me. The enjoyment of it is hampered by the way it's cut up. I really would have liked, and we'll see what with next week's episode, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to say I really wish that episodes 7 and 8 were combined. This one.
Well, the whole series flows really, really well from episode to episode. And I know this because over the weekend, I finally convinced the family to sit down and binge watch the existing episodes of Skeleton Crew. And I watched with them because I was really keen on seeing how all these dominoes fall when you watch it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And it flows really, really well. And
do you think it plays better?
I would say yes.
Real? Okay.
I would say yes. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, I have no problem with the week-to-week thing. Star Wars is based on the old serials of the 30s and 40s that George Lucas was so influenced by. Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers. Those were about half an hour, and they would end on a cliffhanger. And you'd always have to wait till next week. I have no problem with carrying that vibe forward in the 21st century. But just something I observed was it flows really well as a bingeable show when you watch episode by episode. And it's a great viewing experience. And watching it that way really did elevate my appreciation for this particular story. There are times during this season when I've said, what are we doing here? Isn't wars a big part of Star Wars? It says it right there. Star Wars. Where's the war? There's no war. And I've kind of grown tired of this variety of Star Wars storytelling. I really wish that Lucasfilm would find a sweet spot and really start to dig into that spot and build a story instead of throwing all of these vastly different series at us multiple times a year. Instead, do one big grand story with long seasons and meaty episodes that are an hour long each. I was talking to Ernie today. All he could do was air frustrations with how short the episodes are. He says, as soon as I get into it, it's over. And he seemed legitimately depressed by it because I can't, I wanted to talk to him about it. I was really jacked up about this week's show and thought we would have a really colorful and fun conversation. And Ernie seemed tired and fatigued with the whole situation. And maybe it was just Ernie. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Maybe he was just having a bad day. But, I think that is reflective of how a lot of viewers feel because we've been conditioned, especially by Netflix, to get full seasons of hour-long episodes dropping all at once. And you can really customize how deep you dive into it each time you sit down. But with Skeleton Crew, we have to take it piecemeal. And again, while I say I have no problem with it, I understand the frustration that viewers have been having and fans have been having.
Yeah, I think if they were just more in that 40 to 45 minute range, that would give us another 10, 15 minutes to, I think it would help. I do think it would help. I just, I don't know why with this particular show, I'm struggling with it more than I was with others. It could be the fact that I'm super invested. And so, I'm definitely following the action a little closer. But Mandalorian, I felt, especially in those first couple of seasons, yes, there were cliffhangers, but I thought that Favreau and Filoni were really trying to give us a taste of kind of 80s style television. And somehow that's gotten lost, and it's let's make a 3, 4, 5 hour movie and just chop it up into content. Content. Well, Slim Lewis, no relation, no relation to Scott St. Louis, says, prediction, Wim sees his father almost killed, and the Force becomes strong with him, similar to Rey in Episode 7, and he saves the day. Whoa, could Wim be the Jedi that this show has been looking for? We've been looking at Jod. By the way, he takes those binders off, those cuffs, and I noticed the gloves. The gloves are always there every time he's pulling one of these tricks, and the binders were metal, so, I wanted to say that Jod had Force powers, but I'm starting to doubt it. But, Jim, is it possible? Could Wim? If there's a Jedi, is there a Jedi in the house? If there's a Jedi in the house, is it Wim?
Well, the way that they've kind of twisted the Force around. It's now, something that anybody could do if they learn it, Sabine, anyone? So I would say that there is always the potential for Wim to start to develop Force abilities and things like that. I don't know if the show would really benefit from that. Not with them being kids. Maybe down the road, if these characters keep getting used, that's someplace you can take his character. But I mean, you know why I feel that way is because the four of them have this really nice tight chemistry where each member of their group is able to contribute a certain element of their personality or skills or knowledge as they all work together on this adventure. And if Wim suddenly becomes Force sensitive, that creates a gulf of separation between him and the other kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
they
the show
work
would
really well as a team, right?
Yes, exactly. And so I don't know if the show or potential stories that you could tell with these kids would benefit from having one of them being, quote, special. I mean, they already have KB, who has exceptional abilities none of the kids would be able to do, but she also was held back by other restrictions due to her health. Yeah, I just don't know if giving one of them Force abilities, giving Wim Force abilities would be something that would help the show or help future stories. So
yeah,
maybe way down the line. I don't know.
Fun thought though. All right, let's go back to the phones. We've got, speaking of Wim, we got somebody who wants to talk about Wim.
It's time for Blake's Take.
Kid Blake on the line. Hello, Blake.
Hey, Chut.
Chut. Hey, it's good that you wanted to talk about Wim because that's what we were just chatting about. Potential Jedi in the making. Is he the Jedi? Is he the Force sensitive that's been under our nose the whole time, but we've been thinking it was Jod?
Yeah, I think that Wim is going to be Force sensitive. Like by the end of, well, not by the end, by next episode, I mean, he's definitely going to be Force sensitive. He's going to, like, try to save the day and then take Jod's lightsaber. That's what I think. He's going to take the lightsaber and he's going to hold it up the right way this time and not have it upside down.
I was going to say, he really needs to redeem himself there for someone who's such a Jedi aficionado. Okay.
So, Blake, do you think he's going to, like, he instead of, you just said take it, but he would use the Force to take it, right? Like pull it off of his belt with the Force and levitate it into his own hand. That would be a shocker.
Yeah.
I mean, just the idea. Go ahead.
So like how in Ahsoka, when Sabine like kind of uses the Force a little bit and it barely moves, I feel like that's kind of going to be Wim. It's going to, like, the camera's going to zoom in to the lightsaber. It's going to start to shake. And then you're going to see it just fly into Wim's hand, and he's going to turn it on. Make it like, kind of like when Rey in Rise of Skywalker grabs the lightsaber and just turns it on when she gets it from Kylo.
Okay. Yeah, someone in the chat says, what if you see that? What if you see that saber start to pull out of Jod's hand and it ends up in Neil's hand? Wouldn't that be a twist?
In Neil?
Ends up in his trunk.
That would be crazy.
He is a Force-sensitive trunk.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd like to see more. Him grabbing something with that trunk or Force lightning coming out of that trunk, dark side style. Imagine those big eyes of his turning red. Oh, would that be a dark turn for the show? Well, Blake, we've got one more episode. Would you like to make any more predictions on where this is going to go? And I'll ask you, would you like to see another season of Skeleton Crew?
I would like to see another season of Skeleton Crew. This has been a really good show. But I liked Acolyte for the most part. I feel like it definitely needs a season 2, but they're not doing it.
Yeah.
But this is something that I feel like a season 2 would just be so fun to learn more about Aton,
learn about the pirates and all this stuff, because we don't know a whole lot about the pirates area in the Star Wars universe as much as we do about the Jedi and the Sith and then smugglers and stuff like that. I feel like it would definitely help for a season 2 because we ain't got enough time because we have one episode left unless they like make this one a bit longer. I mean, I'm okay with that. If they
I
make it
think
a bit
we'll get a
longer.
little longer episode. Traditionally, we have for finales. Here's what I hope doesn't happen. And I agree. We've talked about how the pirates becoming a more widely used faction, an alternative to Imperials and First Orders and, and even bounty hunters is kind of nice. It's nice to have another camp to go to. But I hope that Lucasfilm's takeaway from this show, if their algorithms or their stats say to them this was a successful show, because I don't know how they're measuring it, to be honest. I hope their takeaway isn't pirates. I know Star Wars fans love pirates. We're going to do a whole series just about pirates. I want them to learn the right lessons. And the right lesson, I think, for them to learn from this show is well-written, good acting, professional creatives behind it, and likable characters. Really likable characters.
Yeah.
Acolyte, for all of its flaws and for some of its good points, there wasn't one character that I looked forward to seeing every week. It started out with the lead Jedi character. I liked him. His name just flew out of my head. But Saul, yeah. Saul, yeah. See, I don't even care. But by, I think by the 4th episode, he was annoying me and he went out like a punk. And so at the end of the day, there was really no one in that show that I really, really cared about. Whereas this show, I care about all of them in some way. Either I care enough to hate them or I care enough to love them. So that says a lot. I care.
Yeah. I have a feeling that by like next episode or something, at the end, I feel like they're going to save SM-33. They're somehow going to put him back. Like they're going to find a way to fix him. I know he got cut in half. His head got cut off with a lightsaber. But you got KB. She probably knows what's going on. She can probably fix it. She seems like the smart one out of the 4. Most definitely.
Yeah.
So, if anyone was to fix it, KB would try.
Okay,
and they've shown her. They've shown her performing maintenance on the droid before, so definitely there is some background and even maybe a little foreshadowing to prove your point.
So
I would like to see.
Do y'all think that if someone's going to adopt SM-33, in Goonies, Sloth went with Chunk. In this show, if anyone's going to adopt SM-33, we think he's going to go with KB?
Yeah, probably. Either KB or with Wim.
Because I pictured, a couple episodes ago, I thought by the end of this, Jod was going to become a hero, but he was going to be... too dedicated to the pirate life, and he and SM-33 were going to go off into the sunset and have all kinds of pirate adventures together. No, I don't think so.
No.
So where's SM-33 going to end up? Who's he going to live with?
That's a great question.
I think it's either KB or Wim. That's about
KB or Wim.
all I can think of.
Yeah. That'd be fun. Wendell and SM-33 seem pretty like the odd couple. Those two living together. Wendell seems pretty buttoned up.
Yeah, I think Wim would be the best choice because he's the latchkey kid. He's the one who has this gaping hole with no mother. That's a big mystery we got rolling into the season finale too, is what is the story behind Wim's mother? What happened to her? Why is she no longer around? Did she die? Who is Wim's mom? Maybe that will never be explained.
Snoke.
But Wow, a Snoke theory. That's the first Snoke theory I've heard in years. We used to be rife with Snoke theories.
Oh, yeah.
That all came crashing to a halt December 2017. But here Jason is all these years later whipping out a Snoke theory. Didn't see that.
Whipping out my Snoke.
But I think Wim is the one who desires and needs companionship and a family more than and maybe, you know, if life can go back to normal on Aton, which I don't think is the case. I don't see life returning to normal for these characters on Aton because the location of their planet has been compromised. And if one ship could fly through it and the pirates know it's there, sooner or later they'll break through. Sooner or later they'd have to break through.
Yeah.
So the whole mystery and the secret of the jewels of the Republic has been compromised. So what's the ultimate fate of Aton and the society there? Are people going to have to bail? Is it going to get destroyed like the other planets? That's something to keep in mind. Maybe all these planets have a self-destruct mechanism. So if they get discovered, they get destroyed.
Well, I tell you, that's a lot to wrap up, right? That's a lot to wrap up in one episode. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about the future of Aton. I'm sitting here just thinking about the kids and what's going to go on and that they're going to, you know, one of them's going to adopt SM-33 and they're going to go to school in a few days after this. What is going to happen? The cat is out of the proverbial bag with Aton.
I don't think Wim has to worry about that assessment test.
Yeah. As you were saying about Jod, dead men tell no tales. So who are the witnesses to Aton? Of course, you got the people still left on the frigate, but they can't get through, but they know the location. Right. As you were saying earlier, if Jod doesn't survive this show, then there's no one else really to tell. But they've got a whole frigate full of pirates that know where it is.
Right.
And Jod did transmit to them. It's unlikely. We don't know if it got to them, but he tried to transmit to them that, yep, the planet's here. It's just where I told you. It's through the maelstrom. Yeah. All right, Blake. Hey, we got one more episode, one more week. Will we talk to you next week?
Yep.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.
Have a great one. All right.
Look forward to it.
There he goes.
Kid Blake.
Kid Blake. All right. More callers here. Let's someone mentioned the barf earlier. Let's talk to the barf. Boston area Rebel Force radio fans.
Yep, there they are.
It's Boston Dave. I'm the DH tonight. First of all, I'm loving this show. And I think someone just mentioned latchkey a second ago. Latchkey is, for Gen Xers, this is the way we grew up. We rode bikes. We found adventures. The kids today don't have that. And what I see in this show is their call to adventure, to get away from their social media, their cell phones, and everything else. And I'm also seeing the archetypes established in this show that go back to Wizard of Oz. And we see it in the core four of the skeleton crew. We have Fern that has discovered her heart. KB has reattached to her brain. We have Wim, who is actually, in this case, Dorothy. He doesn't want to go home. And Neil has found his courage. And then Dan brought out tonight with finally finding all the gold. There's the end of the Yellow Brick Road. And then also the ship is the Onyx Cinder, which is like a gem, but it's red. And that's the ruby slippers that bring them home.
Wow, I like that.
Lucasfilm, going back to the originals, and I know people have been complaining about the length, but Flash Gordon was very episodic. We're so used to watching Netflix, everything else, constantly getting answered. It's good for kids to have cliffhangers again and not 5-minute or not even 30-second TikTok entertainment.
Yeah.
And I've been watching this show with a buddy's nephew who's 11, and I asked him if he'd ever seen the Goonies, and he was no. He's like, no. And so I gave him the Goonies as a Christmas present. So it's nice. Hopefully we have a younger generation of like Gen Xers like us that were latchkey kids that found our own adventures, that these kids have the call to adventure. And the last point I'm going to make is I think what seals it, when they get back to the planet, all these robots have the monolithic eye, like how they're under constant surveillance. Someone is controlling them, manipulating them, and everything else. And I'm really enjoying this. And I'm finding the true DNA of the original Star Wars in here. And it's really, really making me happy.
Well, I love the Wizard of Oz analogies. I think you're on to something there. Yeah, it's good. And what I think that it does is it speaks to something we talk a lot about here: the alchemy of Star Wars, Wizard of Oz, and those classic stories. Obviously the mythology, biblical stories, all of that, all the way up through something like the Wizard of Oz. Are the building blocks of the type of stories that George was telling. So, and I know he is a big fan of the Wizard of Oz. This is one where I think that I don't know that this is intended necessarily by the creatives, but you're making a really compelling case for it. So I like it a lot. Just like I love the barf a lot. You're pretty.
Right,
you're pretty smart for a bunch of guys.
Bar free. Night, guys.
See you, buddy. All right. They're pretty smart for guys that call themselves the barf. Yeah. Well, here's the thing that's great is that when a story's, I think that being able to make it analogous to something as iconic and well crafted as the Wizard of Oz is another feather in the cap of this show. The fact that you even draw those parallels, I think, is testament to something that's good, in my opinion.
Yeah, we just need some talking trees, and we'll be in business.
Does SM33? Does that make him Toto?
Well, I see more of a Tin Man connection between SM33 and the character from Wizard of Oz.
That's the Fern, or that's the KB character there. Yeah. Anyway, this isn't the Wizard of Oz podcast. Let's talk to Scott from North Carolina, also a Patreon supporter. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for your patience.
Hey, Jason, Jimmy, and Ernie. There's no place like home.
How nice of you to acknowledge Ernie.
Yeah, that'll go right to his head.
Get Ernie's point of view.
Big Ern.
So enjoyed the conversation tonight about potential Force users. That's what I wanted to add on to with my call. Didn't have Neil as an option, but I think that'd be amazing if he was wielding the Force with his trunk. But I wanted to talk about Jod's apparent use of the Force throughout the season and whether or not it's going to pay off at the end. So last episode, something that I noticed was when Jod was on trial on Brutus's ship, he exchanged what looked like to me a look with that female pirate that was seated next to Brutus, and I thought used a Jedi mind trick to convince her to speak up for him. Kind of reminded me of in Return of the Jedi when Bib Fortuna and Luke had an exchange and, convinced Jabba the Hutt to have an audience for Luke. So wasn't sure if that was just me hoping to see something or if you guys picked up on that too.
All right, Scott, I don't want to argue the point with you because hey, whatever you see is, can be however you take it. But do you think that the writers would hide a Jedi mind trick and make it so subtle? I really think that you would have heard the Force rumble. You would have had some effect that would have really made it obvious, just like they're doing with the tricks that he's doing with metallic objects.
Right. He would have waved his hand, to make it clear to us as an audience that he's using the Jedi mind trick. He didn't do that. So while I enjoy the assumption you're making, I don't think it's very accurate. As a matter of fact, the only force abilities we've seen Jude employ is the art of telekinesis, being able to make things float through the air or being able to control things from a distance. That's the only thing he's done that we see is obvious. Sure, he ignited a lightsaber and used it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a force user. For crying out loud, we saw Han Solo use a lightsaber to slice open the belly of a Tauntaun back in Empire Strikes Back. So anyone could use a lightsaber. But the Jedi mind trick, no, I think it would have to have been a little more obvious as far as someone who consumes storytelling. I think we would have had to have a real solid indication that that's what he was doing. But maybe. I can't rule it out.
It's possible.
Can't rule it out. Mm-hmm. He sure has been lucky. And keep in mind, Fern did when they escaped from Port Borga back in the 3rd episode. They made a point of having Fern say, "This is all just happening too easy. This is all too easy." Fern does say that. So there could be some force ability fueling Jude's luck at the end of the day.
All too easy.
And yeah, she does say that was too easy, but there was never any follow-up on it. So,
well, we also have, and Scott, we'll get back to you in just one second, but we also have Jude Law on talk shows confirming that the character is force sensitive. He's reluctant to admit that he's a Jedi. He's not Jedi. Force. And I think might have been Kimmel or whoever it was that said, "Yeah, force sensitive." Yeah, force sensitive. Now that's an actor on a talk show. Anything is possible, but I feel like Jude has come close enough to confirming that there's force sensitivity there. Back to you, Scott.
Any other comments you want to make, Scott?
Felt like you guys were pulling down the curtain on the Wizard of Oz there for me, but I appreciate the theory. That's what I'm kind of looking to see is, do you think it matters if, the writers answered that for us at the end? I kind of see, Jad sinisterly ignited that lightsaber there, and I think he is going to kind of play along, I'm a Jedi here to, transport the gold and everything like that, and I found your children and save them. Do you think it matters to the wrapping up the story if we do find out if Jad had magnets in his pocket, right, to do the tricks, or if he actually was force sensitive to the overall story when the season wraps up?
Wow. So the
as an audience, I believe they owe us that. They owe us that.
I agree.
After all of this mystery about him, and as characters, I think Wim deserves an explanation too, because he's the one who really has a hero worship for Jedi and puts them on a pedestal, and
including Jad.
In the good and ideally, that's what Wim has been projecting out there, and I think he as a character deserves some sort of answer, because the harsh reality of who Jad really is was very apparent to Wim in this episode. Attack! Wim was really sort of embracing his own inner pirate in that moment. But, he was compelled to take action in a very futile effort. Of course, he's surrounded by pirates holding blasters, and Jad has a lightsaber. But still, Wim felt like that was the moment to make his move, because the reality is just too much for him to take at this point. That Jad is a liar. Everything everyone was saying about him came true. And I think Wim feels a little burned by that. I think Wim put faith in Jad.
Yes.
And now it's been revealed that Jad is their worst nightmare. So I think Wim he deserves an explanation, and we as an audience definitely do as well.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't sure if there's the better character arc is if he's exposed as a fraud, or if he's actually, what he kind of indicates it all along. So I think it's a better payoff for Wim to get that justification, like you said.
Yeah, I think I'll have to see how they do it, but I agree with Mac that they owe us that explanation, and certainly the characters inside the show are owed that explanation, in particular Wim. Great. Thanks for the call, Scott, and thanks for the Patreon support. Jim, I'm going to draw the line at my my embrace of the Wizard of Oz analogy. If the last episode ends with Wim waking up in his bed saying, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there, that I'll really be disappointed then.
Yeah, I think only Wizard of Oz can get away with that.
Yeah, that was a one and done. You're absolutely right. They
cashed in the chips on that one. Yeah, Hollywood in general cashed in all their chips with that one. Back in 1939.
It was all just a dream. We've got a Patreon VIP on the line here. We've got Kier from San Diego. Kier, thanks for holding. Thanks for your patience. And welcome to the show.
Yeah. Jason, Jimmy, pleasure to make a first appearance on the Q&A. Probably not too many comments that are necessarily going to provide that much interest above what maybe some other folks have already said, but a couple quick things.
Throw it out there. Throw it out
really
there. I bet
we haven't
good stuff.
We haven't heard it from you, so yeah.
That's right, Kier. That's right.
Yeah, wow. No, appreciate it. The first thing I really loved the parent relay race, the stun relay race.
Yeah, I did too.
At the beginning of the episode, I've got a feeling that's going to become quickly a little convention special there. Try and reenact that.
Maybe.
And then
I call claimsies on Numa's mom, or Neil's mom, Numa. I got claimsies on that character if it happens at the convention, because she put out like very little efforts. As long as there's no running involved, I'm down with it. Hey, did you notice when she heard rustling in the woods, she goes, "I have a bad," and then she got cut off.
Right.
We're going to get, "I have a bad feeling about this," but they didn't go too far. Wendell heard something. He goes, "Probably a tree sucker." So that got my gears spinning. What the hell is a tree sucker? There is a legitimate term in the real world for a tree sucker, according to Google AI. Tree suckers are stems that grow from the base of a tree or from its root system. They can be a nuisance and can cause problems for trees. I don't think that's what they were talking about. I think they were talking about some sort of weird, animal species on their planet, a tree sucker. Or maybe it's a machine that harvests all the fruit from a tree by sucking it dry. I don't know. Or maybe it sucks the sap. And they make the great maple syrup. Aton is like the Star Wars equivalent of Vermont, where the maple syrup there is outrageously good. But tree sucker, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know.
I just wasn't sure. I didn't think they'd get past like stunning two parents. I didn't think they could keep that joke going that long, but it worked, pretty much stunning everybody. So I like it. And then another thing coming from, I've lived in before the US in Australia and a lot of time in the UK as well. So you mentioned it earlier, Jimmy, but for me, when I heard Stephen Fry, that was like instantly recognizable, not just from Harry Potter, but from a couple other things as well. So it's not really a theory as such, but I would say that, knowing him as an actor, I'm definitely hoping it's not a, Jack Black style cameo. I don't think it's going to be. I think he's a much more dramatic actor than that. It's a bit of a polymath too, as you mentioned. So
not stunt casting in the case of Stephen Fry. No, he's a bit of a he's almost like a folk hero of some sort for those in the UK. Stephen Fry is almost one of those. He's beyond criticism, anything. Everybody loves the guy, which is great.
Yeah, I was going to use the term polymath. He's like a super smart dude. He's not just an actor. He does a bunch of different things. And who knows? But as the supervisor, for one thing, I'd be very surprised if he was a droid. I don't think that's going to be. That doesn't seem like what they would use him for. Who knows though? Could be an alien. He's definitely done like a lot of voice stuff, so maybe he's not in like human form or something. But for one thing, super super kind of interested to see where that goes. And then the last thing, honestly, and had a bit of a chat to Tyler about this as well. I don't think it's something that folks haven't mentioned on this before, and I think you guys have too. But I've liked and loved a lot of the Star Wars series thus far, but honestly, this one really takes me back to both like Star Wars Episode 4 and that first cantina scene. And Jason, I know you sort of had that similar feeling probably with Return of the Jedi and the sail barge. And what I'm getting at there, guys, is what I think with this series, you could call it aesthetic, you could call it the world building, but an example for me is like, compared to the other series, even when a character has like a super minor appearance or something, like there was the pirate like jail guard, there was Kim the owl, there's ones who haven't even necessarily had lines, like a lot of the aliens inside the cantina and what have you. What I'm getting at there is sort of takes me back to being a kid in that whole mystery and even just wondering in your mind like what the background of some of these characters are, and thinking about them, making up their own stories behind them and so on.
Here,
It's great.
I love what you're saying here, because as you're talking about it, I'm going, yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like the lady pirate, that's guarding the kids at one point, and then there's the lady pirate on the other lady pirate on the comms. Like, you're right, they're all very unique, and they kind of give me and you're absolutely right. For me, it was the Jabba's palace. That was my version of the cantina scene as a 6-7-year-old kid. But I am kind of having that. It's almost like, and Jim was talking earlier about the pilot that we lost. Like, there's no Glurb and Meat. We were talking about Meat. Like, there's no like truly background characters in this show. They all have kind of a unique look, a vibe, a something where you're right, where this is more world building than we have seen. Whereas everything else has felt very derivative or contrived. This just seems like an honest version of what I think George was doing. And I don't want to gloat or glow on this too much, but what you just said really makes a lot of sense with how I've been sort of feeling internally about some of these background characters and stuff like that. So I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would too. And I think that the main difference is this is a Star Wars streaming series like The Mandalorian that's being run by filmmaking veterans, guys who have big notches on their belt as far as creating feature films for Hollywood. Obviously, John Watts did the Spider-Man trilogy, and he's got his producer with him, Chris Ford, and that's the difference, as opposed to a show like, The Acolyte, where it's a lot of unproven talent trying to make Star Wars. And, it's hard to blame the filmmakers themselves. If I was a novice filmmaker and someone offered me Star Wars, I would jump all over it. The issue is the way that Lucasfilm provides guidance for the unproven talent by, I think, giving them more than they can chew, giving them too much, where they're over their skis. In a case like this show, you can tell that studio interference may have been a little more minimal when you compare it to a show like Kenobi or The Acolyte, where you have largely unproven talent working on it and working without the guidance really needed to create things, stories that live up to the quality of and the standards of Star Wars storytelling that we as fans demand. I think that's the biggest difference. Having experienced filmmakers working in Star Wars is essential. I don't think it should be treated as a training ground or launching pad for a career. I think if you're going to have people work on Star Wars, they have to have the credentials and the experience necessary. And that's the biggest difference, I think, what we're seeing from Skeleton Crew, as opposed to even Ahsoka. Dave Filoni, he's never directed a feature film. And so I'm kind of nervous about his potential film as well. I almost wish like Dave had some more practical experience, but I mean, his career is strictly Star Wars, so it's almost like he's kind of earning the right to make a film. But I don't know.
I really feel like Rebel Force Radio, Mac and myself, because of the nature of these after shows, and we've been doing them since the very first premiere of Mandalorian, in the Disney Plus era.
Clone Wars, even.
Well, yeah, of course, all that stuff. Yeah. But in specifically talking about Disney Plus, in that era, we can tell certain things. We can tell what the enthusiasm level for a show is. We can tell, in some ways, what the viewership of the show is. And I will say this, in terms of enthusiasm, fan enthusiasm, you've got, and I'm not talking about viewership, I'm talking about the enthusiasm of the callers, of the people that are corresponding and engaging with us. You've got Mandalorian, Andor, and Skeleton Crew. And to back up Mac's point, in all three cases, you've got bona fide, actual filmmakers at the helm of all three of those series. That's not an accident.
And you can see in the finished product, the experience shines through. And I think we're seeing that in Skeleton Crew. That's why I think John Watts deserves a Star Wars film. Really, if you want to start talking about directors from Skeleton Crew, go with the showrunner. Give him a film. He's proven he can run a series in the Star Wars universe. He can handle a trilogy, a very well-received trilogy of Spider-Man films from Marvel. And he's done a lot of other feature films too, personal projects, independent projects. The guy has the chops. He has the resume. I think John Watts might be a good potential future director for Star Wars.
Love it. Thanks so much, Kier, for the call. And wow, Patreon VIP, really, really appreciate your support there. I think we've got time for one more caller. Who's going to get it? It's got to be a Patreon member. Let's go with Rich. Rich from Fond du Lac. We know Rich. How you doing, buddy?
Chut, guys.
Chut.
Doing good.
Hey, you've got a heap big responsibility here. You're the last caller of the night, so you got to. I can't say make it good. That's not my line. But let's do well.
Well, so the best thing to do at this point is talk about the future of Star Wars, I think, and specifically with Aton. It's a whole new planet. We never heard it before until this. Surrounded with a whole bunch of treasure. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, they integrate it into the story somehow. Tyler was saying he hopes to see some sequel trilogy connection with it. Maybe even something like Exegol funding there, something like that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Here's what I think. Yes, the Uber fan in me that wants to see it all connect. Yes, of course I'd like that. What I like about Skeleton Crew so much is the fact that friends that I have, people I know that aren't as steeped in the lore and all of it, but just love the spirit of Star Wars, love the spirit of Amblin, the 80s or whatever, can jump into this show and have a good time. I love that. And if we get a little Easter egg that ties into the sequel trilogy, great. But I don't want this to turn into a device that tries to put over or sell the sequel trilogy. That's where I would draw the line. Easter egg, fine, but don't use the Skeleton Crew to justify your trilogy.
100%. I think one of the things about it that's felt so amazing is it makes me feel like I'm a kid again. It makes me feel like I'm watching something like A New Hope, where I just dove into that, not having any backstory, and just enjoying it and having fun with it. So yeah, loving it. Absolutely.
Low cost of entry, almost zero as far as cost of entry on this series, almost zero. But obviously, look, I want these shows to appeal to Star Wars fans. The last thing I want is for Lucasfilm to say, we got to appeal to the non-Star Wars fan. That's what we want. No, we want this to appeal to them. We want this to appeal to us, but I don't always want it to play so specifically to us and fit into every little nook and cranny of all of our, unanswered questions. And so that's really what I'm enjoying so much about Skeleton Crew is it doesn't have that weight. That's not its mandate to do that, to fill in all the gaps for us.
The tone, the vibe, the pacing, the rhythm, it all feels very Star Wars to me, yet firmly separated from the grand saga that we've been experiencing for all these years. It does stand on its own. It is legitimately a standalone original story told in the Star Wars universe that has no repercussions on the main characters that we've already known, or the Skywalker story, or the Empire versus the Jedi, and all of that stuff. Now, there may be repercussions from this story being felt in future stories that do include all of those elements I just mentioned, and it should to connect it to the bigger picture. But as a standalone story, it's so well executed, and it's really what I think fans have wanted and what Lucasfilm has wanted for a long time. It's just this hard to figure out formula for those guys. And again, I think a lot of credit goes to John Watts and the episodic directors and writers that they've hired. This episode was written by Watts and Ford, and myself, this is my favorite episode of the season thus far. My second favorite was the one that Jake Schreier directed a couple of weeks ago with the spa and the acid pool and all of that. That was previously my favorite episode. This has been elevated to what I thought was the best episode of the season, and really a standout among Star Wars streaming shows in general. So,
well, big thanks to Rich. Thank you, Rich, for the call. Appreciate it. A few more super chats that we want to acknowledge here. We've got David. Says, enjoying Skeleton Crew a lot. Love Jod as a pure villain. Hey, villains. Everybody loves a good villain, right? So if Jod just ends up being a tried and true villain, a la Captain Hook, a la the Joker, some of the great iconic villains that we all sort of love to hate, so be it. So he loves Jod as a pure villain. Whichever side claims the gold can dominate galactic affairs. This show could have big consequences. It could. I like what Jim was just saying about having consequences in the future of Star Wars as opposed to trying to be something that has consequences in the past of Star Wars, which is something that they try to do a lot, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, they say, well, George Lucas went back and did the prequels, so that's the way Star Wars is supposed to work. Well, not really. Story is everything, and a progressive story is the most important thing. You want it to move everything forward. And, I do have a prediction to make, though, is I don't believe any of this money is going to make it off of Aton. I believe Aton's going to be destroyed, like the other planets.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's going to be destroyed.
That would be a very dark ending to this show.
That was a very whim-like reaction from you when I said that. You're like, whoa! That is something I've loved about Whim. When I was doing my rewatch, when they meet Hana at Akron, she pulls off a couple of physical moves when she first meets the kids, and like she slides across the floor and kind of like jumps through a window of something. And both times when she does it, Whim is like, whoa! It's like he loves it. He loves it. This is the stuff he's been wanting to see for a long time. And he was, you could tell just by those reactions, he was so impressed by what he was seeing from another kid. And Jason, you reminded me of a young Whim right there.
I love it. I love it. I love that I can still inspire the images of youth. Pepper Spray Johnny says, sorry for the technical difficulties last week. I don't remember there being technical difficulties. But He goes on to say, I'll do some quick cleanup. I think it's possible one of our heroes could die. Maybe one of the kids. KB is vulnerable. Also, Tom Kane is active on social media and doing well. Boy, is that good news. I wasn't aware of that, that Tom himself, he's been sort of represented by his daughter online since his stroke. But that's great news that he's online himself and improving.
I have not really been keeping too much, in touch with Tom. But send us a link or something.
Yeah, please.
Because his Twitter account has been, pretty much dormant for the last few years.
So where are you hearing from Tom? Pepper Spray Johnny's a pretty good source, so we're going to assume that's accurate. But Jim, what do you think about one of the kids perishing? Boy, that's a tough thing to do in entertainment, is to put the kids in danger.
The girl who plays KB.
Oh boy.
She did an interview like this past week, and they asked her, what do you see? What word can you use to describe the way this season's going to wrap up? And she said death. Okay.
What?
She said
what? See what happens when we take a couple weeks off from the weekly podcast? Wow. That's a bombshell. Death.
Yeah. She did say, she was, who is she talking to? Hollywood Reporter or someone? I'll try to find the quote real quickly if I can, because I certainly don't want to misquote in this situation.
He dead.
But
they dead. We all dead.
So, but I mean, so could she have been talking about her own character? Okay, here it is. It's in Hollywood Reporter. What's the most cryptically vague word you can offer for the final 2 episodes? She says very simply, death. Hollywood Reporter says that's a very ominous tease. And her name is Kriana Crater. She says, I know, but it's pretty vague. And Hollywood Reporter says, now I'm the one who's scared. And she says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She's such a soft-spoken kid. That there's something like just really precious about her in that way. And I wish that this was a video interview so we can hear this back and forth. I would love to hear it, but that's the cryptically vague word she uses to describe the final 2 episodes. Death.
Wow. That's heavy stuff, Doc. That's crazy. Man, oh man. Couple more super chats here. You guys are just so generous. Thank you so much. Scott St. Louis, we heard from, for a series that we're enjoying so much, why hasn't it been more broadly marketed as other Star Wars series? I tell you, Scott, I do think that Star Wars has a marketing problem. Can you imagine saying that? Star Wars practically invented big blockbuster marketing and tie-ins and all that. I think Star Wars has a marketing problem. I don't think they know who they're marketing to. I don't think they know how to market. I think it's run by a bunch of amateurs, quite frankly.
Amateurs who've been with the company for 20, 30 years in some cases in their PR and marketing department. I think Lucasfilm needs an enema. I think they need to flush out a lot of people who've been there for way too long. They've gotten stale and complacent. And a lot of times they don't know what they're doing. But there's also another way to look at it. It costs a lot of money to market.
Sure does.
These
That's
shows.
for sure.
And we know that there was heavy marketing for the Acolyte, and that didn't exactly affect the bottom line like Disney wanted it to. And so maybe they're just taking a fly under the radar approach with this show and banking on good word of mouth and positive reviews like we give it here. But I don't know what to tell you about that marketing and PR department at Lucasfilm.
Scuttlebutt that we heard leading it up to the premiere, Jim, was that there wasn't a lot of confidence in this show behind the scenes at Lucasfilm. And so that's probably what led to the lack of aggressive marketing strategy for it.
And we took note of very lightweight marketing going into the Solo film. Remember that?
Yes.
It seemed like they start very late in the process. It seemed like they were rolling out some hype for that film, whereas The Force Awakens started seeing its hype machine go into full effect a solid year and a half before that film even was released. I think 2 months before the Solo film was released, we were sitting around going, where's the marketing? Where are the trailers? There's no TV commercials. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So it's inconsistent for sure. You know, I wouldn't say the Mandalorian was heavily marketed, but that did come with the rollout of the Disney Plus app to begin with.
Exactly.
So
I think it was part of that initial push for subscribers.
But we saw mad marketing for other Disney series. I think Ahsoka had some pretty solid marketing. And we know The Acolyte, there was a lot of enthusiasm coming from the studio for that show, which only indicates how desperately out of touch Lucasfilm PR and marketing is with what Star Wars fans actually want. And so with this show, it's almost like, let's just throw it out there and see what happens. It's almost just like casting a line with a hook and a worm into the ocean and seeing if anything bites. Well, fans certainly have been biting and very enthusiastically gobbling up what you're serving us here, Lucasfilm Disney. And I think that we should start really enthusiastically start talking about Skeleton Crew in a way that might impress the studio enough to grant it a second season or maybe a standalone film. Maybe a Skeleton Crew film.
Let them know
can
you
be
like
the
it.
next thing.
Let them know.
Let them know you
hear
like
you.
it.
Yeah. Tanya, back again. Love Tanya. Every week she's here supporting the show. I think the gold credits will likely support the First Order, given that Hux's father is a member of the Shadow Council during this timeline, RFR number 1. Tanya, I agree. I think that there could be some connection between this money, this source of money, and the First Order. I like that. Again, I want to see it kind of subtly dropped and not, the crux of anything. But I like it very much.
Yeah. Same here.
Turtle Wars says, I found this episode. Hey, Turtle Wars. I found this episode to be a lot more enjoyable than any of the others, but I wish we'd have gotten a closer look at the tree suckers. He would say that. He's interested in the flora and the fauna and the animal life. Turtle Wars is a world-renowned expert in turtles. So you would imagine that he would be very interested in the wildlife of the galaxy far, far away.
Star Wars may have just given us a great insult we can throw around. Oh, go suck a tree. Can
you imagine
give it a shot tomorrow?
If Turtle Wars was sort of the Richard Attenborough of the galaxy far, far away, and they did like how they do these nature series and North America or whatever, and Turtle Wars narrates the galaxy far, far away version of these incredible nature documentaries. Here we see the peaceful planet of Dagobah and the reptilian creatures that inhabit it. That's what I want Turtle Wars to do.
But Richard Attenborough never really got his hands dirty. I see Turtle Wars more as our very own crocodile hunter.
Oh, he's going
and
in.
Here
He's
you see
tackling these things.
Here you see the elusive tree sucker sucking on a tree. Let's get a closer look. Turtle Wars.
I like that. Here's Minoc Matt. Minoc Matt says, I think the supervisor is a robot like in the Twilight Zone episode.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. What if it is just a droid? Wow. I don't know what to think about that. I just have assumed that it's a humanoid or something along those lines. But man, all we see in positions of authority so far have been droids. You want to say that there's a human at the top of that chain, but maybe not. Maybe it is a droid.
There was a computer in, I'm trying to think of the Twilight Zone episode where, I mean, the one I'm thinking of is the computer that was like jealous. There was a jealous computer that, well, I'm not going to get all into that.
Yeah. Max watched a few New Year's Eve Twilight Zone marathons, I think, in his past. I think he's done that.
I've seen my share. I've definitely seen every episode of Twilight Zone. But
here's David
jealous...
Frizzell the third. He says, methinks no redemption for Jod. He's going to go out trying to get the treasure a la Benny in The Mummy. Okay. Actually, I would love to see him covered in molten gold with the saber still in his hand. Can you imagine that? He gets what he really, really wants at the end. Gold. Boy, is he happy at the end of that episode when he's just laughing maniacally as the gold is pouring down his.
That was a great scene.
Yeah.
Some really good stuff right there, because I mean, he was practically in tears looking at that cart of, I mean, what was it? A cart or something of just a table covered. And that was enough. You zoom in on him, looking at him. He's about ready to just burst into tears. He's so overwhelmed. And he's looking at like one table of credits in a giant vault of credits, one among 1,159 other vaults.
39.
Oh,
One
did I say 59? I meant 39.
Yeah.
One more than 1138. Or you can look at it as them saying, well, there's 1138 more vaults.
Right.
But I wonder why they didn't just land on the one, 1138 as the full number of all the vaults.
Well, one person in our chat said that they think that this particular vault is going to get destroyed, so then there will actually be 1138 on the planet.
Well, that could be. Yeah, maybe that'll be at the end of it. But again, I mean, what good is money if you're not going to spend it? I don't see this money going anywhere. I see the planet getting destroyed.
Wow.
Neil's brothers and sisters perishing.
Nostramachus here with his predictions, sensing a very dark future. Here's Dominique Garrett says, Neil's mom attempt to run with the ball is now my new favorite thing in Star Wars. I got to go back and rewatch Neil's mom running with the not the ball. I think he's talking about the transmitter, right?
Yeah, the communications buoy.
Yeah, the buoy.
But I mean, really, all Numa does is turn around, attempt to pick it up, and she gets zapped. I mean, she doesn't even get to run with it. It is legitimately an attempt to run. It's not actually running. She does not get very far. She does not go anywhere at all, as a matter of fact.
Eric from Phoenix, as he often does with the last word here, says, can't make the stream tonight. Really like this episode. The acting was fantastic. Only issue was the Furby aliens. They looked awful in full light, and no need to see them in future projects. Whim plus turbo laser equals dead Jod. Ooh, Whim plus turbo laser, dead Jod. Wow.
Really terrible job featuring those two aliens. You see them as Wendell is looking at the ship that had just landed, and a crowd starts to gather, and you see classic Star Wars aliens among them. There's a hammerhead over there, and then up front are these two Teletubbies. It's some of the weakest alien design I think we've ever seen in Star Wars. I don't think anything compares.
Gosh, I didn't notice that.
Terrible.
Notice
that.
Oh
God, I had
Where are these Teletubbies?
I freeze framed it.
Got them. Did you? Oh.
And my angst just multiplied as I'm sitting there staring at the freeze frame of these Teletubby type. And of course, they're the same species as that little Furby that Neil was crushing on in the first episode at school.
Yeah, one of them. Yep.
Yeah, but we see adult versions of that. And I swear to God, it looks like the concept artists were working in the dark Like they blindfolded. They couldn't have done any worse if they actually, if they actually were blindfolded. I just am shocked. It's shocked at the shock at the terrible design here. I mean, it makes those aliens from the Buck Rogers show of the 80s look advanced compared to what they're creating. Hey, all right, but that's a negative. I don't want to leave on a negative.
No,
I really thought this was.
But I missed them. You and Eric have built it up to where I need to go back and look at it and see these Furby guys, because the kids were kind of cute, but boy, all right. Oh my goodness,
it was a fail. It was a fail.
What a fun after show. What a fun episode to talk about. Man, oh man, it just keeps getting better and better. I can't believe we only have one more of these, but fear not. We've got Andor Season 2 around the corner. Well, around the corner after the winter, but we'll get through it. And don't forget, if you found us through the Rebel Force Radio after shows, we do a weekly podcast where we just talk about everything Star Wars. So we are going to look at it as a way to tide you over. We're the bridge between new Star Wars movies, new Star Wars television series. As we're fond of saying, it's like Star Wars Celebration every week coming through your headphones or your speakers in your car or whatever. So make sure if you're just watching or listening to these after shows to check out the weekly podcast. Huge thanks to everybody that has called in, all of our supporters, the folks on the chat. We got one more of these to do. Also, big thanks to our official call screener and the program observer here at Rebel Force Radio, Tyler Page. Thank you so much, Tyler. Anything we missed this week? I think we got to most of our callers. We didn't get to everybody, but any low-hanging fruit that you want to point out for us?
Ooh, low-hanging fruit. I don't know. I think we covered a lot. Between the chat, you guys, and the callers, this is like a superb after show for a superb episode of not the Acolyte. But yeah, so I don't know. I just had such a great time screening calls tonight, and I appreciate everyone calling in. I think hopefully there's some sort of left field character or line of dialogue that ties this in a little bit to the sequels, because I think it's worth it. I think it's there and it's possible. And I keep looking over at my Gran action figure, because I noticed the Gran in this episode, his hands were a little human. I like my Gran to be a little, I like their hands to be a little more MIDI. Like,
yeah, like a hockey glove or something.
Yeah, bulky.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing that I noticed.
All right, man. Well,
Tyler is, of course, an expert on Grands.
Is he?
He is an expert on Grands. Of course, he portrays Grando the Grand on RFR RPG. That's his character. So he knows all things Grand. That was the same Grand that got shot in the eye in the first episode. You notice he had a patch or something over his eye, or a cybernetic kind of thing. They didn't really shine the camera on him too much. But again, those background characters, they seem like they're all telling their own stories in this series. Yeah.
They sure are. All right, Tyler, thanks so much, buddy. We got one more to do, and we'll see you here next week. But for now, final thoughts, Jimmy Mack, on this episode.
Ooh. Wow, I have a few of them. Just, simple observations, like the editing of this episode I thought was exceptional. And I've been very critical of the way that Star Wars editing has been happening in the entire Disney era. This show and this particular episode seem to be a step above, and even down to like the little George Lucas type touches, like the crossfades from left to right as the pirate frigate flies in out of hyperspace and then just kind of rides across the camera. It's pure Star Wars shots like that, and I love seeing it being pulled off so effectively. Something else I noticed was Jude, when he's on board the pirate frigate, and Brutus starts getting discouraged by Aton, thinking it's impossible to land on the planet because of the barrier. Jude says, "It's a trick, you fools." And right when he says trick, you see all this spit fly out of Jude Law's mouth. It was incredible. It was great. Check out that moment again, and you'll see what I'm seeing. because the whole thing's the shot is backlit. So you really see that spit fly. It looked like someone getting punched in the face during a middleweight fight. I enjoy that for some reason. Those are silly observations I made. Claimsies. We were introduced to claimsies a few times in this show, and its usage seemed really peculiar to me at first, but it actually came into play with the story. So it was just more than a throwaway thing. And I think that's kind of a hallmark of this series, is that nothing really gets just thrown out there for no reason. We have no like just because moments. Even with a silly thing like claimsies, it actually came into play with the story. And so they're not just spitting out this vernacular for no reason. It comes into play with the storytelling. And I love that. Neil observed that when the Onyx Cinder got locked into an autopilot landing sequence, when they approached that Aton, Neil right away is like, oh, just like on Hana's planet. So again, we're seeing these consistencies between these 9 planets, these Jewel of the Republic planets. And I think that's all going to be revealed, why they have all these similarities in the final episode. There's just so much going on here that we have to wrap up, though. My God, there are so many loose threads going into the finale. Is Jude a Jedi? What's the explanation for his Force ability? Ernie says it's the gloves. If that's the truth, this time next week, we will be giving Ernie a big award. Will Jude even survive this series? I think the character is fairly irredeemable at this point, and I see his story coming to an end. We need to know why Aton was forgotten. Maybe the Empire didn't know about it. Maybe Palpatine didn't know. Maybe that was a secret that died with the Republic. So what's up with the Jewels of the Republic? What is exactly the great work? And what happened to the other 8 planets? And what will happen with Aton? Will it suffer the same fate as those other planets? Also, KB, what happened to her? What was the accident? And did Fern have anything to do with the accident? That's something I've been thinking about. What happened to Wim's mom? What is the supervisor? There's some blanks left in Tack Rened's story. And will SM-33 be repaired? These are all things, hopefully, that will get paid off next week. But all in all, for this series, this particular episode sealed the deal for me. This is a major achievement for tightness in Star Wars storytelling. And it's so hard to believe they packed so much into under 30 minutes for this particular episode. I think it's totally 100% confirmed. This show is a success. And with 1 episode left, I think it doesn't matter how it's all going to wrap up. The first 7 episodes have been outstanding, and it's told a very tight story. John Watts, Christopher Ford writing the script for this episode, they knocked the ball out of the park. Again, the editing was so solid. Lee Isaac Chung got the most out of his actors. Such slick acting from Jude Law. He's such a quality actor, and we're lucky to have him in Star Wars. This episode to me cements it. Skeleton Crew is an all-time classic for Star Wars. Star Wars needed a win. Star Wars fans needed a victory. And with Skeleton Crew, I think it's been achieved. Hondo Ohnaka, not in this episode.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us. Once again, thanks to Tyler Page. Thanks to all of our Patreon supporters, our callers tonight, everyone in the chat. Thanks for hanging with us. In this last few seconds, please give us a thumbs up if you're still watching. We've got a number of people here and a disproportionate number of thumbs up. So get those thumbs up. And we'll see you right here next week, next Wednesday, the big season finale, Skeleton Crew. Thank you all so much for Rebel Force Radio. I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.